Hello and welcome back to Podcast with a K. I'm your host Carla with a K, and I am joined here on this fine Sunday evening by a returning guest, a fan favorite, someone who's always interesting to talk to about literally anything because she will say exactly what's on her mind. Introducing and welcoming back to the studio, Yami Harkin.
Oh, hello, Carla.
Welcome. Give me 1 second to finish setting up this audio because I am hearing a little bit of static feedback. Going to switch you over to the other aux cord. We had this issue last week where this aux cord wasn't even actually working, so please hold as we deal with this. So, anyway, Yami, in the meantime, what have you been up to?
Oh, okay. What did I say? I decided to stay home this semester, and I quit the job that I had at this restaurant that I've been working at since I was like 18. I'm 21 on Wednesday, so that's why I mentioned the age difference.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. And I transferred to another restaurant a little further away, but I like it. It's better environment, less chaotic. I feel more appreciated. Put my mental health first.
Love to see it.
No social life, family. That's about it. And politics and just like news and everything. But that's my life.
Wow. Well, I'm super happy for you. When was the last time you were on the show? It's been a while. There's a lot that's changed, and there's a lot to discuss.
Yeah. I don't remember, honestly. I think the last thing I remember was when you had me and Yessie and Mo, and we were all talking about like our concert experiences. Then I'm pretty sure we did another one after that, but I don't remember.
I think we did another one, and we talked politics, right? Because it was after. It wasn't a debate. There was something that happened. It was whenever we had, I think, Armando in the studio as well.
I don't remember.
For your solo episode.
I had a solo episode? I don't remember. I have really bad memory.
Well, in any case, we're going to be doing a little bit more of that, right? Because, as I mentioned, you're very much the type to say exactly what's on your mind, and there's been a lot going on in the world. Some political, some not. So, first and foremost, Yami, we all know that you are a huge BTS stan.
Yes, I love my boys.
So, please tell us what's been on your mind recently about BTS, because you sent me quite the verbal speech of, you know, your thoughts on why BTS is going to dominate the music scene pretty much eternally.
Well, okay, not in that sense, but more so, okay, the reason that I came up with that idea, and I thought of you, because, like, we always had, like, talks about music and artists and everything, and, like, when they hit their peaks and then when they, like, fall or whatever, and I was just, like, I don't know if I was on TikTok or if I was on, like, YouTube, but it was this new group. I forgot what group it was. Oh, I think, okay, no disrespect, but it was Blackpink. And they were BTS, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, they're from the same generation. Like, how would they be the same, like, artists and whatever? And then, Big Hit, which is a company that BTS is under, released a new, like, group and everything. And everybody's like, okay, they're the next BTS. And I'm like, what does that mean, like, the next BTS, you know? And then I, like, started thinking that, I mean, when has, like, a Korean group or an international group besides One Direction that were, like, you know, white males from Europe dominated, like BTS is doing right now? And I don't know, like, I started thinking that every single, like, video that I've watched that has discussed, like, the boy groups that have been successful in, like, the U.S. and all over the world have been, like, you know, like, groups that are, like, English speakers. So how is the Korean group being so successful in America? And, like, and then that got me thinking, like, it's not that they're a one-hit wonder because they're not a one-hit wonder, but they're like a one-hit boy wonder, if that makes sense.
A one-hit
And
boy wonder.
yeah, so like I don't know how to explain it, but like you know that there are artists who like have a one hit, and then after that they just kind of fall. And so
Okay.
it's kind of like that, but with boy groups. So like you know how you had like One Direction, and then you had like smaller boy groups compared to One Direction, like the Wanted, Five Sauce, but it was always One Direction on top. And then like when they broke up, like boy groups kind of disappeared from like the global perspective. And then you have BTS, and then BTS has like other groups that are comparing against them, like Monster X, Winner, like Icon, like they're all competing against like each other. But it's like, will we ever really have another like Korean group or like Asian group that is as big as One Direction? And I don't think there is, because even with BTS like being who they are right now, they've like spoken about how hard it is for them to break in America. Even though we were like, yeah, like they're everywhere and so forth. But like when it comes to being nominated for Grammys, like they're not nominated. And people oftentimes are like, you know, it's because they're not like American, and they're American award shows. But like Adele is an American, Harry Styles is an American, Ed Sheeran is an American. So like your argument like falls. Seems very racist, and it is. And so. Yeah, and so I don't know, like when people argue that, like, you know, like, will there ever be like another BTS or another Asian group, like Blackpink is after them, like they're gonna be as popular as them? I'm like, I don't think any artist in this generation will be as popular, like any Asian artist will be as popular as BTS. Like, I mean, they're like number one in the Billboard 100 or something. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, and I will say I always found it interesting whenever people wanted to make the argument of like, oh, this is the next that, right? Like we see it a lot all the time. For example, you mentioned One Direction, right? One Direction started getting big, and they were like, is this the new, is this the next Beatles? Like, what does that even mean, right? Because to be fair, you know, certain artists reach like a peak of like their record sales, or like they set like a set number of tracks on the charts, right? And like even whenever Bieber started getting big, people were like, "This is the next Michael Jackson," and I'm like, "How are you gonna? You can't really equate artists, especially like across genres like that, right?" And so you raise a valid point that you don't think that the world is ready for another BTS, and unfortunately, I think that you made quite an astute observation, right? Because whenever people make it big, especially from other countries, and especially when they're singing in other languages, it's usually one or two like per like musical cycle that makes it big, right? So BTS happened to be the K-pop band that, you know, made it. And like when people think K-pop, they think BTS, right? Whenever people think we talk a lot about Bad Bunny recently, but like whenever people think like Latin music, he's one of the top, right? Cardi and like a lot of others, but like there's few and far between that make it, and they often have to depend on like features in order to even become noticed. Like for BTS to have to made it on their own, that was crazy. Like that was a global phenomenon, and it is different from One Direction because One Direction sings in English, which is, you know, pretty widely understood, as obviously especially in the States. But for BTS to have made it, that's huge, and I don't know if there's another BTS in the wait that's gonna make it. Granted, I'm not like obsessed with BTS as you are. I only very casually listen to them whenever they're trending or something. But for the time that they were like at the top of like all the trending pages, I get it. You know, I get the hype, and it makes sense because they prepare for this, right? Like they essentially train them to be superstars so that they make it big and so that they are like marketable across the world.
Yeah. So like I don't know, like it makes me really sad to think like other groups won't reach like their popularity. But you can also see it in like, okay, so like Korea has three big companies that produce like K-pop groups, right? It's YG Entertainment, JYP, and then SM Entertainment. And so what SM Entertainment, one of the big companies, did is create a new group from old groups. of K-pop artists, and they called them the Avengers, like Monster. Not Monster. I'm sorry, different one. What is it called? What is it called? Super M. Super M. And it's like a form of like artists that already have support into one big group, and they're like, and they made their American debut. They like compete with BTS, if that makes sense, on the American market. And while they are doing fairly good, like I think the company was expecting them to be as big as BTS, but I don't think they realized that like even like BTS has had to deal with like radios not willing to put their songs, not willing to play their songs because they're not in English. And then like award shows discriminating against them, and yeah, I don't think people really realize how hard it must be for like a foreign artist to thrive in a country that's dominated by a single language and by like a similar mentality of like this is what music is, everything else is like not acceptable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's crazy that there's such like a standard set because especially in music, you know, everyone thinks like they just have to make that one track that pushes them to the top, but like it's something that we've discussed fairly often as well, is that artists that make it big are often the ones that either play it safe or do something completely different. But that risk is it's very make it or break it. Not everyone makes it, obviously. Like doing the safe thing is often more of a streamlined way to at least become noticed, especially in the States, right? But you're not going to stay on the charts unless you do something different.
Yeah.
So what would you say then? Like, is there another band that you think should make it this big?
I don't know. I have my personal favorites. Like ATEEZ is my second favorite group after BTS. I don't think another. Again, it sucks because I love K-pop. But I just don't think there's another group that will ever have the momentum and the popularity that BTS has. Like EXO is a group that's very popular in Korea, so like they compete against BTS. And like there's a rivalry because the population is so small in Korea compared to like the U.S. or like every other country. So in terms of popularity in Korea, like obviously like there will be another boy group that will like maybe match Korea's BTS popularity, but there will never be another boy group, girl group that will ever reach BTS's global popularity, if that makes sense.
For sure. In chat, somebody said that Superb is the most popular put together, and they've already confessed that they were literally made to compete with BTS. And I remember, I think, hearing, maybe it was on the React channel on YouTube or Philip DeFranco show, but one of them went into that about how like people are made like specifically to compete on their level in their style. And that to me is, I think, the craziest thing. I mean, it makes sense, obviously, but like imagine your entire career just being about one-upping somebody that already made it big instead of doing your own sound. Because it kind of draws it back to like, are you going to do the safe thing or are you going to create something new that, you know, organically grows into your own attention?
And the thing is that they don't like. I just feel like they're, like you said, they play it safe so often. So Super M, that's the group that like is trying to compete with BTS, has the most generic music, and like not to say that BTS is superior, because obviously like you're entitled to like your opinion. If you don't think they're great artists, like, you know, that's your opinion. But like they have real meaning in like their lyrics. You know, like they carry like a significance. Like when you read the lyrics, you're like, wow, like, you know, they actually put thought into this. Others are just like singing about the randomest things, which is fine. Just because you just want to listen to dumb lyrics. I know I do. Like I have like music that makes no sense that I play all the time. But I feel like that's what distinguishes BTS so much, because they were the first to truly like dive into the pool of like, let's discuss mental health, let's discuss this and that, which was like very taboo in Korea. But this new group, like their sole purpose is to like just sell albums, sell out arenas and everything. And I feel like not only is that harmful to like what it means to like create a new group, but also like to the members of that group when they're like, your sole reason is to beat BTS, and like that expectations you place on the members. I just feel like, and like, because they work crazy hours, so I'm like if you're just trying to like compete against an artist that big, maybe take a look at like what made them big, and it wasn't like that they just had songs, you know, like it's what was in the songs that made people be like, oh, like even if it's a completely different language, like I'm willing to like listen to the music.
I feel that. And honestly, okay, so this makes me think of a similar but completely different situation because you've made so many like really good points about like the depth and like the heartfelt like quality of the music, and I'm about to compare it to Justin Bieber. Because okay, so whenever I saw that this was a thing was right after Bieber like started making it big, you started you know like who's gonna be the next Bieber? You saw Cody Simpson take a shot at it. You saw I think Austin Mahone take a shot at it. You saw a lot of like
I forgot he existed.
exactly. So I was about to say, like, name a like any song that they've done recently ever, right? Like they kind of. I mean, I know they keep doing music because every now and then, like, Spotify will try to push it on like release radar, and I'm like, thanks but no thanks. But like, it's interesting because you know you have like supposedly this like dead set formula, and it's gonna work, and then it doesn't because they keep doing more of the same, and it's like, well, we already had one guy doing that. Why do we need another?
And I think like that's what makes artists like become popular is that they're willing to like go above and beyond. Like Bad Bunny, like love our king. Like he like you said, he had a very
Our
like
king.
distinguishable voice.
Yeah.
He just like I don't know what it is, but this man just like makes banger after banger and is so unproblematic. Like I just love him. I cannot ever say the same thing about Anuel because I feel like Anuel's music is just the same thing over and over and over. The same thing with what's his face? I can't even name
Exactly,
it. Oh my God.
exactly. I think we had this talk with the show last year. I think it was with Juan's episode where he was asking about different Latin artists, and I was like, honestly, you're saying names who I know exist and who I know are singers, but if I saw any of them walking down the street, I'd have no idea which one was which one. Like, I just they haven't made anything that
Like a
particularly
copy and
stands out.
paste.
Essentially, yes. But before we ramble on more about essentially more of the same and do the exact thing that we're complaining that artists do, Yami, give us a song to listen to.
Huh?
Give us a
Give us
song to listen
okay.
to.
So, my boys released their first all-English song called Dynamite, and let me tell you why they released it. Because they thought the world needed a little bit of happiness in the midst of all this chaos and sadness, so they made this song for you, like, to just sing and dance and be happy. And you can say whatever you want. I don't care. I think it's a good song.
Alright. So without further ado, here is Dynamite by BTS. And we're back. During the song break, we had a really, really good discussion in which Yami confessed that she will be getting a BTS tattoo. So, Yami, they're that influential for you, huh?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, every single like I told myself I would never ever get an artist tattooed on me, because you know like phases and everything. But it's just like this group is just different. Like every single time, I know it sounds corny that I have hit a low point in my life, like where my mental health has been dragged through like a fucking democratic presidential debate forward and backward and 3 times in a row. They always just release music. They always release music. It's like they know, like, this girl's just depressed. Like, we need to, like, make her happy. Which obviously is not true because they don't know who I am whatsoever. But they just release music, and they always help me break out of my depression episodes. So as a tribute to that, I'm giving them tattoo.
That is really, really sweet. And again, as always, I love the power of music. But you took care of the segue for me. Let's talk some politics.
I got you.
Okay, so here's what I want to discuss because a couple of things had happened, and I know you also live on the internet as I do. And whenever I asked you if this was a topic, because we were going through topics, and I asked you if this would be something you'd want to discuss, and you said bet. So I'm gonna tie these in together a little bit, all right? We saw Melania Trump had a lot to say about a lot of things. We have thoughts and we have opinions. However, what I want to compare it to is her like presentation, you know, as a public figure compared to, because you mentioned the debate, compared to how Biden is expected to, you know, react to Trump. Because, for example, on Saturday Night Live yesterday, which came back and I'm obsessed with, they kind of made fun of them both, right? Because Trump kept talking and Biden was like starting to lose his cool, right? And they kind of made a joke about like Biden having to like anger management. And so, what I wanted to ask you is, how do you feel about the way that, the First Lady herself, like, cómo se comporta en el público versus the expectations that are being held of Biden currently as he kind of fields everything throws at him?
So can you repeat the first question to me?
What do you think about the expectations placed on each one of them and how they should behave?
I think it goes without saying that they should have some common decency, like as human beings. Like if you know, like that Biden has a son that died of cancer and another one that's recovering from a drug addiction, the last thing you should do is attack them for that. Like first of all, like how messed up do you have to be? Politics aside, like there's just like humanity, like whatever. I feel like each person should carry themselves with how they, like, with the values that they carry. And I feel like those that do, like, it's very distinguishable. But I also feel like you have to realize that, like, as public figures, you hold so much responsibility, not only to, like, your constituents, if you're a political figure, but also to, like, just the communities in general that you represent, the countries that you represent. So, like, Biden and Trump's debate was just an embarrassment to this country. Like, as a whole, I feel like other countries just looked at us like, wow. And we thought we had it bad. I don't know, like, I just feel like her video in general was just very, like, privileged. And, like, oh, my God, look at me. I'm suffering from the White House while I'm a millionaire. Everything's taken care of for me, my family, and their generations. And, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's just my perspective on that. Like,
sure.
I saw, like, her video was just so, I don't know how to say it, it's so entitled. It's kind of like, she was, I don't know, can I discuss the video now?
Yeah, please, by all means, the floor is yours.
So, like, I don't know if, like, you guys have seen the video. It's been viral. I saw it on TikTok. Someone was on TikTok.
On TikTok? I saw it on Twitter.
I saw it on TikTok first, but, it was basically her, like, talking to, I don't know who she was talking to, I think one of her friends, about how, like, she has it so hard because nobody gives a shit about the, like, because she doesn't care about the Christmas decorations, and nobody else cares about the Christmas decorations, and she, like, has to because it's her job. And when she, like, is asked something, is asked about the Christmas decorations, like, everybody's like, there are bigger things in the world that you should be caring about, and she's like, give me a effing break. I'm sorry, I know I've cursed, like, throughout this whole thing, but
thank you.
She's like, give me an effing break. Like, I'm tired. Like, I'm doing my best. Like, I tried getting the kids back with their mom, but it has to go through the law, through the process. And Obama this, Obama that, and it's always followed, like, politicians just, like, deflating. Never ever do they, like, hold themselves accountable for what they say. And just her statement in general was, like, from the perspective of a woman who got, like, the Einstein visa, which means that she was, like, crazy talented or crazy smart, but the only reason she got it was because she married a rich man. So that wasn't really through the process, through the laws. It was, like, through her, like, sugar daddy's, like, money, which is what Trump was at one point. And I feel like she just does not recognize that, and I just think that also goes into part with the role that the First Lady is seen as, like, they cannot be too political, they cannot be too involved, they have to be pretty right next to their husbands as they deal with, like, soft and sensitive topics, and their husband deals with the hard work. Like, that in itself is such a stereotype. Like, the First Lady should be able to have responsibilities that are just as important as, like, what her husband is doing, and I just feel like she hasn't done anything like that. She started a campaign against bullying when her husband is the biggest bully in the country, and she just, like, is so insensitive, not aware of her privilege, of like, her entitlements, and that entire video was just absolutely disgusting. And I was like, I mean, like, what did you expect, though? Like, she's so quiet in front of the media,
right?
She doesn't say anything, she's like, oh, this and that, like, I don't agree, But, like, behind closed doors, I bet she's just as racist and ignorant as her husband. Like, there is no doubt in my mind. Like, they cannot be married and her not share the same ideas as him.
Sure.
And so I think that, like, just that video kind of will put people back on, like, she may not say anything in public and she may not seem it, but she's just as racist, if not more so than her husband, and that's my opinion.
So something she mentioned was that she doesn't appreciate being called complicit to her husband, right? They just say that she supports him and that she's just like him, and she's complaining about this. And I was watching this video and I was like, okay, sure, I understand like the desire to be recognized as an individual with her own thoughts, her own opinions, because then she's like, she tried to reunite the kid, she tried to do her job, but the laws or whatever. But I think she really, it has a little bit to do as well with, I guess, like where we started, which is the expectations of behavior. She kind of invited this when she wore the jacket that is also mentioned in the video, the one that said, I don't really care to you, to the border. And so I'm like, why would you pull a stunt like that, knowing that it would get that attention, and then not expect it to get that attention if she did it deliberately for the sake of, inciting like that reaction in the more liberal half of America, right? So she admits this in the video as well. And so my perspective on this was that she's making herself seem like a victim when she's the one that went out, like, to deliberately provoke that reaction, right? And I get that it's frustrating. And like you said, there's kind of an expectation for the First Lady to just kind of be cute and be quiet. But whenever she's, actually, like, publishing in some way her beliefs, she doesn't seem prepared to receive, like, the backlash, right? And it's got to be hard. I mean, there's a lot of backlash.
Yeah, but I also, I find it very hard to pity politicians who are kind of at the root, not because she's, at the root of the issue, but, she's living with this man, she, may not share the same opinions as him, but it's, you're the one, though, at the end of the day, is with him. And you could be like, hey, maybe don't do this, maybe don't say that, maybe, but you can't control him at the same time,
But why should it be her responsibility? Not that I'm not going to, say I'm taking on the position of defending anyone here, but I'm saying why should it be the First Lady's responsibility to rein in the president, who's already very much got, everyone's eyes on him in the world? Because
if you think about it, he's not any different from the guy who ran. He's not any different from the asshole that, published bought ads off the newspaper to bring back the death penalty to kill the the Central Park 5 exonerated man. He's not any different. He just has the title of president, but he doesn't have that title when they're private. It's not like she walks up to him and be like, "Hi, Mr. President." No, she talks to him like her husband.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, those are just titles. So she also does have the responsibility and the influence to be it's obviously it's not her job. But if my husband were being an asshole, be like, hey, yo, check yourself. What is wrong with you? If she doesn't, it's because she either agrees with him or she just doesn't want to lose her money. I don't know. I just obviously it's not her responsibility. But as a human being, if you don't say something, it's either because you're a complicit, you're scared, or you agree. I don't see it any other way.
Right. Okay. See, and that makes sense because I remember whenever this was originally happening, especially the thing with the jacket, because I was like, okay, I saw that and I was like, really, bro? That's what we're doing now? But I feel like it's more so of she doesn't want to be associated with I guess his way of dealing with it, because I assume they agree on a lot of things, right? They are married, they are both heading this country right now. And so one could assume that they think similarly. And so whenever people are like, I can't believe she did that, I'm like, really though? It makes sense. Why are you surprised? This is literally the brand that they've built for themselves, right? So where is this shock coming from? But I've never understood whenever people are like, why doesn't she tell him something? And then she did the jacket thing and I was like, see, she thinks the same way he does. So she's not going to stop him because she doesn't particularly disagree enough to make him do anything. And I don't think he'd be the type to listen either, And kind of on that same train of thought, during the debate, everyone was like, yo, they need to be more professional, they need to calm down. And I'm like, what in the past 4 years has led you to believe that this man is going to change his way of presenting himself to the world now, right? like we have seen kind of a change in tone a little bit, because I think they're both realizing the importance of the undecided voter. But I feel like whenever like again, Saturday Night Live very much leaned into the fact that Biden was like trying to keep his cool the whole time, like, but it came across kind of as flustered, I think, right? Like we were expecting a more explosive debate, I think, and we just got kind of awkward chaos.
Yeah, and like I think I mentioned earlier, like one of my new coworkers at the job that I have, he watched the debate, right? And I was like, oh, like tell me like what was your opinion on it? And he was just like, you know, there was a point in where like Biden looked into the camera. He's like, I'm talking to you, like you regular Americans. And my coworker was like, no, he's not. Like he's not talking to us. Like none of them cares about like the future of this country. They're just trying to kick this man out of office. And like that's ultimately what this election is. Like it's not like that everybody agrees with Biden. They're like, yeah, like let's support Biden. It's more so like we need to get this man out of office. So we saw that at the debate. Like there was no consistency. There was no actual conversations being held. They was just kind of like, I'm talking over you, Trump side, Biden, I'm here for the American people, but I don't really know what I'm talking about type of thing, you know?
Yeah, it's very, very, very much not at all like the way that anyone thought it was going to go. Like that's for sure. And I think that in the future we're probably going to see a little bit more of the same, because they're both going to be very like still stuck in their ways, or we're going to see like them going hard for each other. I don't think either of them are going to opt to take the more professional, like cool and composed approach to it. I feel like it's going to be a lot more hard hitting.
Yeah, he's not 13, he's 14. My 14-year-old brother watched the debate because it was part of his assignment, and the entire time he's like, what? Sorry, my dog's in the room with me. 2 seconds, please.
Sure thing. I don't know. In chat earlier, somebody had said about people being complicit. It's probably not easy. Even if she didn't want to be, she probably couldn't just like up and leave, because that is a man of power. I just wanted to like note that. Yes, I agree with that. Anyway, continue your point.
And it was his first time watching a presidential debate. And he's like, what are they talking about? Like, what's going on? And he had some topics that he had to write down for his class. So, like, one of them was, like, COVID. The other one was, one of them was COVID. One of them was, like, the next Supreme Court nominee. And then the other one was this and that. And by the end of the night, his team was blank. He's like, they did not discuss anything. None of them had any answers, any solutions. And I was like, yeah, like, if you're 14, as confused, imagine everybody else too. Like, what is this madness?
Yeah, and I don't think that the debates are going to really do very much to change anyone's mind. I feel like at this point, whoever's going to be voting has already decided how they're voting, right? And they did an interview afterwards with people who were, like, undecided voters, and they were like, how many of y'all think that the president won? One person out of, I think it was, like, maybe 10 people sitting there. One person raised their hand. How many people think Biden won? Again, only one person raises their hand. And so the reporter looks at the camera, and so she's like, as you can see, our undecided voters are still unclear how to feel even after seeing the debate. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it's going to stay, dude. I don't think there's very much of anything that could sway, because, like, there's some people who are very, like, deliberately centrist, and getting their vote is going to be just kind of, like, a matter of just going with the flow, you know, whatever keeps the peace for the longest, even if that just means remaining in a situation as it is, instead of disrupting the balance. Because I feel like a lot of people who are, like, self-declared undecided voters just don't want to have to endure, like, the intensity of change, because any progress is going to come with a lot of change. So it's like, it's baby steps, right? And everyone's like, oh, well, I don't really want to vote for either one because neither of them are going to do what I want them to do. And it's like, okay, but you gotta like start kind of aligning with something and kind of help be a part of the process that guides the country in whatever direction it is that you want. Although you also have the argument that everything is pre-decided anyway, and that votes don't mean anything, which I really think and hope is wrong.
Yeah, there are a lot of people on social media that I don't agree with. um, that are just always constantly bashing those that choose to vote, um, and those that like don't. So I'm like, what do you want? Like, what do you want people to do? You know? And unless someone actually provides an answer, like, if people are like they're going to be as confused as everybody else. Like with this debate, it's kind of like, you know, like you can either choose to not vote, not to vote for Trump, choose to vote for Biden. You may not like Biden. Like, I know that I don't agree with everything Biden has said. Like, one thing that like Trump did say that I didn't fully agree with, but kind of like we're like, oh right, yeah, like, you know, I didn't think about that. Like, Biden has been in power as a senator, I think, for like 47 years, and then like as vice president, maybe how much has he done? I never really thought of that question until like my coworker brought it up, and I was like, yeah, like, you know, I didn't really notice that. Because I'm like, you know, if AOC, my queen, were to run for office, I would campaign my ass off my butt off for her. But there's just no candidate right now. But people who choose not to vote, and then those that are like, why are you going to vote for Biden? It's like, if you don't want to, because you want this orange man in office for 4 more years, like, people are just so excited to like just like have a new party, have a third party. But it's like this system was designed as a two-party system, and that sucks. Obviously, that sucks for everybody who like wants to incorporate new ideas. But until like we can at least get him out of office, you know, then we'll like maybe next election we'll have something new. But I just don't agree with people who are like, you know, you shouldn't vote for Joe Biden if you're like, you're not happy with him, or you should vote for him. And it's kind of, does that make sense? Like the condescendingness of like voting and then not voting in this election. It's like at the end of the day, people are going to do whatever they want to do. If you choose to like blame them for voting for a candidate that you're not 100% with, you know, that's your view. But like at the same time, don't make them feel bad when they're settling for Biden out of Trump.
And let me ask you something, because you've kind of touched on it a little bit. Would you prefer then, and this is going to sound like such an obvious answer, but like it's something that's discussed way too much for my liking, and it's if people were stuck between voting and not voting, right? If they vote and they don't vote your way, are you mad about it?
No, because you're voting for like who you think fits your values and your beliefs best. You know, if that's Trump, okay, like that's good for you. Like if it's Biden, then that's good for you. Like whatever. Like I just think you also have to realize that this country just has so many ideas and so many beliefs. So like people, that's why Trump got into office. Like, you know, people agree with his ideas, his beliefs, and like his like propaganda that he like you know, promoted for months. So like if someone does vote, like okay, vote for who you think fits your like ideas best. And if you choose not to vote, then that's just like, okay, take this presidential election, for example. Choosing to vote for Trump is a vote for Trump. Choosing to vote for Biden is a vote for Biden. But if you're someone who's like very like democratic or like liberal in a sense, and you're like choosing to not vote for Biden is a vote for Trump. In a sense, it is just like, you know, a vote for not voting for Biden. I don't know if that makes sense, but like even if someone doesn't agree with my ideas, as long as they vote, that's who they want in office. You know, I may not like that,
right,
but you can't have everything in life align with your beliefs, and I think that's what people don't recognize. So like you cannot have change if you're not willing to listen to the different perspectives that people have, because then you're just as hard-headed and ignorant as those that you criticize. Like if you're not willing to like have a decent discussion about, you know, like how come you feel like this or how come you feel like that, like sure, you may not agree, but at least you have a perspective of the other side.
Yeah, and that's something that I definitely have discussed in the past, especially with people who I knew from back home, because I've lived in different areas, and I've known people from like different parts of the state, right, and now of the country, of course, and of thanks to the internet of the world, and people's experiences very much shape their beliefs, right? But there's also like a different set of values in a different place, because circumstances that lead to events and change and political unrest, I guess, are completely different contexts, right? Like you're not gonna find the same issues in another country with the same context, right? For example, with and this is a little bit off topic, but like the topic of, we've discussed this before, is why it's coming to mind, like the concept of cultural appropriation, right? Like that's a completely different like critique, I guess, of that in different countries, because there's different cultures, right? There's people who care about it and people who don't. And this is like an example for like, say that is like the platform that you're running on, right? You're not going to have everyone agree with you because not everyone's going to have had the exact same experience as you, right? And so whenever it comes to convincing people to vote one way or another, like you said, the third party vote is very much just, it's not that you're voting for the person you want, you're just, and you're not going to get the majority. You're kind of just not voting to remove the person in office, which is sad that it's what it's come down to, right? You're not necessarily aligning with your beliefs, you're just disagreeing with the current status quo. So you either vote to keep it the same, or you vote for one other person. Like, that's your only option.
Yeah. And, like, I don't know, like, obviously you know me that I'm a very political person. And, like, if I were to, like, place my ideals on a spectrum, it'd be closer to where AOC leans on her policies. Like, if she were to embody, like, a party, like, you know, that's where I'd be. But there are people on social media that I follow that are just like, you know, that bash those that don't share the same beliefs that this person and I share. You know, like we have similar ideologies, and they bash every single person that doesn't agree. They're like, I have all respect for you if you do this and that. And I'm like, you're just as like harsh and like as the Republicans are sometimes with their policies, and that's why people don't like want to have a conversation with people who have ideas like you and I, because you put on this barrier and this perspective. They're like, I have all respect for you as a human being to do this, do that. And, you know, and some issues I'll be like, all right, like if it comes to like you disrespecting somebody flat out because of like the color of their skin or their sexual orientation,
right.
Like that's where I draw like a line. But when it comes to like having decent political conversations with someone who may not be as knowledgeable with politics as you, to the first thing you say to them be like, F you if you agree with Biden, you know? And it's like, shut up. Like, what do you gain from that, you know?
Right.
It's just like, there may be somebody out there who doesn't know, like, all of the policies and just wants Trump out of office right now. Like, that's okay. Like, that's the beginning. If you want to have a conversation with them about, it's not your job to educate, obviously, not. But if you want to, like, show somebody, like, a different perspective, it does not begin with you bashing their beliefs and bashing their perspective, because then you are just in this continuous cycle of like, only people that think like me are right, only people that agree with me are right, and then that's the exact same position, the exact same thing that got us into this like predicament as a whole. So that's just my little
no, like I said,
timeline.
Like I said, I always like discussing these things with you because you have like a very I kind of want to say almost objective perspective on how you analyze these situations, because like you said, there are people who will be like, if you don't agree with everything that I am voting for, how dare you even speak in my direction, right? And it's like, sometimes all it takes is just one issue to decide how you vote, right? Like, for example, this comes up in conversation every now and then, but like, if like you said, kind of like, you have your hard line at like the color of your skin or like sexual orientation and stuff like that, right? Like, one of my biggest things is like, is this guy attacking me for being Mexican? Like, something that's beyond my control. Like, just, this is a thing that exists, and I would prefer to not have that person trash talking something that is completely external to who I am as a person and how my values align, right? So it's like, not everything has to be that you agree completely or disagree completely with any candidate. Sometimes it's just like this one little thing that you just can't let go of, just kind of like with people in general, right? And very much in the spirit of this show, like, I love to discuss with people who I don't agree with, because you can always learn something, even if it's just a different perspective. And you might not end up agreeing with it, but there's always something to be gained, especially whenever it comes from people's personal experience, because it's not something that you had in life. So understanding that is super, super important to getting why somebody would supposedly align with like the worst person, like, how dare you, how could you, like, especially, and you know, the whole party system in general is broken, so broken, but that's a completely separate topic.
And like the people that I'm referring to like on my social media, they are very smart people, and they like have similar ideologies to me, and I'm always like constantly wanting to learn. And so I always kind of like want to reach out, be like, hey, like, why do you think this? Why do you think that? But they have placed such a barrier on like their beliefs. So they're like, F you for thinking differently. That I'm just like, I just feel like I can't talk to you. You know, like I'm just like it's just like a block, and I don't know if they recognize that. It just makes it seem like I'm not able to have a conversation to help me grow and my knowledge grow, and the same goes to you, because like if you're not willing to like listen to my perspective of like why I may agree with you or why I may not agree with you, that just like keeps us like two cars running towards each other, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like it's always important to have conversations with people. Obviously, like there's a quote that I like saw on Twitter, but like if it's rooted in your oppression, like obviously you don't have to like have or believe or have these conversations. But sometimes like we come from such privilege and such privilege, like we all hold privilege. I don't care what you say, like we all hold privileges in different forms and different aspects. And sometimes we don't recognize that, and it allows us to like have conversations with others. Like somebody that might be Republican that I may talk to may not walk out the door thinking, "Oh, I'm a Democrat now," or I think like this and I think that. But it does place an idea in their minds, you know. Like when I tell people that I'm DACA, they're like, "Wow, I didn't realize that." Like I have some conservative friends, some conservative coworkers at my other job, that they're like, yeah, I love you, and but I don't agree with this and I agree with that in immigration. And I look at them and I'm like, well, I'm DACA. Like I have DACA, and I'm not going to speak for my entire community, or am I going to speak for like everybody else? But now you have a face to like add that label to. That like when you think about it, like, you know, it just, and they're like, wow, like what does that even mean? Like what does DACA mean? Like I didn't know what that was. And so then that opens a conversation, but it's not because we're both like attacking each other right away. For this person, like, oh, okay, like you think like that. Look, okay, well, here's my perspective. And I just think like it's something that like we sometimes forget. And you know, whatever, people can say what they want on social media, like, you know, to each their own. But if I just like, I feel like you're constantly attacking me and my beliefs, and not making me feel like I'm not able to talk to you about this, about you, like instantly like saying like, well, you're wrong, then I'm just gonna block you. Like I will not have the energy, and I will not have the time. And I just like, I think there's people who like will be willing to listen. Like, you know, like Jessica's brother is always hitting me up with him like, hey, like, did you see this? Did you see that? And it's somebody that I know I can have a conversation with. And even if me and Moy are not able to like agree with every single thing, we're able to have that like barrier of like uncomfortableness be broken, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure. And kind of like you said earlier, it's like it's no one's job to educate anyone else, right? However, how would you even hope to start a dialogue if you're not willing to do that? Because some people might just not be aware of what it is that they even have to learn. It's just not something that's ever crossed their mind. And again, pointing back to something you said, putting a face to an issue can kind of just put an idea in somebody's mind. Like they could still completely disagree conceptually, and like that's fine. Like that's ultimately your choice. But that dialogue needs to be there, you know? Like there has to be a conversation. And something that I've noticed also as well with social media has been like, oh, well, you're left or you're right, but you're not left enough. You're not right enough. And it's like, if you're settling for this candidate, you're not a true representative of your party. And I'm like, well, who said anyone had to be that, dude? We're given two options. Just pick one. Like, because if you're not, like you said, if you're not voting, then do you really have a say in literally anything that goes on afterwards? Because you kind of just let by and you sat by and let it happen.
Yeah. And I don't know, there was a point where people were just like, I'm not gonna vote because I don't agree with Biden and I just don't like Trump. And I'm like, okay, like first, privilege, that's a very big privilege you hold. And then that person tried speaking about like the undocumented community, and I'm like, first of all, you don't get to speak for the community because we don't have one spokesperson at our conventions where we're like, oh yeah, you're gonna talk about DACA for like a year, you know. Sorry, my sarcasm is like tonight. Yeah, and then they're like, yeah, I'm just gonna vote, and I'm like, okay, like cool, don't vote. You're choosing to like, in my perspective, in my point of view, add a vote to the other person because you're not choosing to go out there and place your vote, you know, like, fine, whatever. Like, I'm not gonna bash and be like, F you for not voting. Fine, don't vote. If you're gonna be hard-headed about it, if you're not willing to have a conversation about it, I'm not gonna convince you, not waste my time, not waste my energy. Like, I have other things I could be doing. But there were some people that I know, they were like, I'm not sure about voting. And I knew that I could talk to them. They registered to vote like a few days ago. So, like, it's those conversations that can mean so much. Like, I have this conversations with people who, like, don't agree with me all the time. I'm like, okay, fine. Like, you know what? Like, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you if it's just arguing, if it's not, like, listening. There's a difference between having a conversation where you are listening to one another, and there's another one between having a conversation and you're just yelling at each other. Like, it's not like you're listening to what I'm saying and I'm listening to what you're saying. And I feel like oftentimes in social media, people hide behind their screens, and they're like you said, like, you're not left enough, you're not right enough. If you set up for Biden, you're not on the same spectrum as us. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, do you, like, fine, whatever. I'm not as left as you want me to be. I don't give. Like, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, like, I am not going to conform myself to a check mark in a box if I'm left enough, if I'm right enough, if I'm centralist enough, because, like, my beliefs will never just be the same thing as everybody else's, you know? And so to all those people, I'm just kind of like, if that works for you, fantastic. But it does not work on everybody, and you cannot force, and you cannot, like, look down upon and downgrade, look upon and, like, condescend everybody else who doesn't agree with you. Because then it's just like, what makes you also high and mighty, sis or bro? Gender non-inclusive word, sorry.
Sis or bro can mean anyone and anything at any given moment. Okay. I stand by that.
Yeah, someone. Be more inclusive.
I mean, you can call me anything as long as you call me with respect, bro. Like, I don't care. But someone in chat said people need to realize politics is a spectrum and nothing is ever absolute, and I wholeheartedly agree with that, because there are some issues. Who's that? Whatever is cool. But I'm like, there are some issues where I definitely agree more with the left and the right, and there's other issues that I'm just like, both make fair points, and then there's other things where I'm like, the right's not wrong about it, right? The right's not wrong. Anyway, so, like, then there's so many things, and for you to completely align with one side, it's not necessarily going to work for everyone in everyone's life, because, as we've said, everyone has their own personal experiences. So, like, whether it's the economy or gun control or public school systems, like, you're not going to agree completely with one side ever, right? Like, there's going to be things that you have to pick your you essentially have to pick your battles, right? Every election cycle, you have to pick the issue that you care about the most, and hope whoever gets elected deals with it in the way that you want them to, right? But I digress.
Exactly.
All right, Yami. Well, as our time draws to a close, you want to give us one more song to listen to wind down for the night and away from the politics?
Yes. This is my favorite song by BTS at the moment. It's called 0 O'Clock. It's Think of It as a Clock. It's basically talking about how every day is a new day. And it's, if you listen to the song, just close your eyes. It literally makes me feel so happy, and I hope it makes the viewers tonight feel happy as well.
All right, so here is 0 O'Clock. All right, that was 0 O'Clock by BTS. Yami, thank you so much for the song suggestion. That was such a vibe, such an aesthetic that we've created in the studio today. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight and for having these conversations. Someone has to have them. Do you have any closing remarks or statements or shout-outs or anything you'd like to say?
Not really. Just, always my biggest things first. Place yourself first, your happiness, recognize your mental health, and if somebody is a threat to any of these, then, just walk away. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you so much for those words. Very, very on the nose for today. Well, without further ado, this is Carla with a K signing off. You've been listening to WECS 90.1, and this was podKast with a K. We will be back next week at the same time on the same station with new nonsense and new guests. Have a fantastic week.